Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Katie. I'm so glad to be here. It's so much fun. I've missed speaking to you guys. It's been very interesting time, isn't it? So ways of being and connecting. One of the things that I find fascinating is going for a walk with a 3-year-old. When's the last time you did it? The last time I did it with one of my grandkids, it took about a half an hour to walk 2 blocks because 3-year-olds are so curious. We had to stop to watch the ants and see where they were going and what they're carrying. We had to look on the side for 4-leaf clovers. I don't think we ever found any. We had to smell the trees and the flowers. It was fascinating, just fascinating. It was just a wonderful time. Do you remember the story in the book of Matthew in the Bible about the children gathering around Jesus and the disciples trying to shoo them away? Jesus stopped the disciples and he said, "Truly, I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." He was saying that unless we adults stop thinking we know everything and get curious about what's going on around us, we're never going to experience the joy of living, the wonder of being one with all there is, free to ask questions and discover new ideas. There's also the message Jesus is quoted in the Sermon on the Mount in the book of Matthew when he talked about the Beatitudes, which Unity minister Eric Butterworth calls attitudes of being, beatitudes. The very first one is, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for they shall inherit the kingdom of God," or heaven. Same thing, really. This has nothing to do with being poor. People kind of interpreted this as that you had to be poor. If you were poor, then you were going to get into heaven. Well, guess what? It's not about suffering through impatience, through poverty, so you'll have pie in the sky when you die. It's a mistranslation of the root word that is called spirit in this case. What it really means is pride. Blessed are the poor in pride. To be poor in spirit or pride means to empty yourself of the desire to think your way into heaven. You can't use your head to get into heaven. You can't force your way in. You can't make it happen. And anyway, in Unity, we don't believe that heaven is a place in the sky that you go after you die. Actually, Pope John in 1957 said that heaven is a state of consciousness, not a physical place you go to after life. Isn't that fascinating? As Eric Butterworth says, heaven is the potential of the spirit that is in you, that is wrapped in your human nature. So, looking at the Beatitude again, it means, blessed are they who can let go of the attempt to understand intellectually, who are teachable, open-minded, receptive to the truth, who are curious and wonder about what living a spiritual life is like. There's a quote from Unity that says, "Curiosity is spirit knocking on the window of your soul." Don't you like that? The window of your soul. It's knocking, saying, take a look at what you could be doing. Hello? Don't be staying inside. Open the window, step through it. And because it's spirit that's delivering the inspiration of curiosity, we have nothing to fear by following through. One of the most curious people I know or knew was my mother. She wanted to learn all the time. She had so many reference books. There were times when someone would broach a subject at dinner and she would have to get up and get her reference book and bring it to the table and read it to us. And of course, then one word led to another. And she was totally oblivious to the fact that we had finished eating, that we had gotten up, and some of us had stayed there to listen because after all, she was our mother. But, we cleared the table, cleaned up the kitchen, done the dishes, and she'd suddenly look up. Oh, what? You've done everything. Oh my goodness. It was so funny. We would just kill ourselves laughing. This was a woman that found a bat dead on the apartment outside her apartment. And she said, Pat, it was in perfect condition. It hadn't been chewed or anything. So she took it upstairs to her apartment and put it in a margarine container in the freezer. And she would take it over to the high school and let the kids there look at the bat in detail. Well, when we went to move her from her apartment, it was still in the freezer. Now, you know what freezers do nowadays. They desiccate everything. It did not look much like a bat anymore, but she was convinced she had to bring the bat with her. I think we accidentally lost it on the trip. But she would travel. She studied countries. She traveled by herself, even when she was in her 80s. And one time she stayed for 3 months at a convent in Italy, so she could use it as a base and explore all the area around her. She used to take ocean freighters, not cruises, from one port to another. She did that all around Japan for about 3 months at a time. She was so curious. She just wanted to know how people lived, what they did, what they believed. So are you curious now? You don't need to be traveling anywhere, really. Maybe not the outer world like my mom did, but your inner world. Figuring out what makes you tick, how you can enter into the kingdom of heaven right here and right now. So this month, in keeping with the theme of curiosity and wonder, Unity offered 14 questions to get you questioning, wondering during this interesting time. They were questions from various Unity ministers and authors, and so I thought it would be kind of interesting to look at them and dig a little deeper. The first one was, how can I see this differently? Whatever this is. When something has happened that you're not thrilled about, like social distancing, become curious about your reaction. One of Unity's fundamental teachings is the law of mind action. It says that we co-create our world with God through our thoughts. As the saying goes, thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. Those aren't the ones that kind of flit through your head. You're not holding those. It's the ones that you're holding. So what kind of thoughts are you holding right now? Be curious about that. Are they the thoughts that you want to use? What kind of world do you want to create? Reverend Patricia Bass, who's currently the acting CEO of Unity Worldwide Ministries, says, listen to your inner wisdom and shift your mindset from blame to empowerment. Yeah. Take inventory of your thoughts and change your thinking to match what you want to create in the world. Look at your choices and take personal responsibility for them. Oh my goodness, this was a mind blower for me when I came into Unity. I had no idea that I had a choice. Really. I did not know that positive thoughts are magnets that naturally lead to positive actions and energy. I thought that the world was created and I just had to put up with it. Now I know that changing my outlook can really change the outcome. And I want to live in heaven, not in hell. So how can you see this differently? Question 2. Who or what can I forgive? This question is kind of a natural one after the previous question, how can I see this differently? Because it's about looking at the people that you resent, you have grievances against, differently. Emily Cady, Unity's first author back in the late 1800s, this is the 21st, so that was 200 years ago. No, can't be. Over 100 years ago. Says, to forgive does not simply mean to arrive at a place of indifference to those who do personal injury to us, or that we think are doing personal injury to us. It means far more than this. To forgive is to give to give some actual, definite good in return for what seems like evil given. It has nothing to do with reconciliation or forgetting or excusing or justice. It has nothing to do with that. Because when you're ready, forgiveness is a powerful choice that you can make that will lead to greater well-being with yourself and in relationships. This choice carries with it an intention to heal yourself. Forgiveness is what it's like to realize that we're spiritual beings having a human experience. We stumble, we make mistakes, we judge, we blame, we feel victimized and resentful. Does this feel like we're in heaven? No. So how do we get out? Forgiveness is about not letting something that happened in the past define who we are today. We can forgive from our hearts, even if our minds don't want us to. We can move towards forgiveness by being willing to be led by our hearts and not by the chatter from our minds and our egos. It's a powerful way to release our negative assessments of others and ourselves, because it's a way of separating the person from the behavior. It's the person that we're forgiving. We don't need to look to forgive the behavior necessarily. We don't need to condone the behavior. It's not about their behavior. It's about the person. And author Lewis Smedes says, to forgive is to set a prisoner free and to realize that prisoner is you. Most of us have heard the statement on the first part of this slide, that I am a spiritual being on a spiritual journey. I like the last part too. No person or experience can keep my good from me. But Reverend Tony Bain, a Unity minister, put out a course I took a few weeks ago on mysticism and the coronavirus, and she put it this way: everything is energy. I am a fractal, holographic, vibrational being living in a multidimensional holographic universe having a spiritual experience. I am not alone in this experience, for I am energetically in relation to everything. What I do to one, I do to all. What I heal in self, I heal in all. Quite the mouthful, eh? What is she talking about? She's actually just saying I'm a spiritual being living in a spiritual universe, because spirit is about fractals and holographic. It's about energy. We're all on vibration. Everything is energy. Fractals have to do with shapes. That shape, say self-similar nature of fractals means that particular elements, and there's a name for them, the Mandelbrot set. Some guy called Mandelbrot figured this out. And they go over and over again, no matter how deep one goes into the image. It's like cauliflower. Have you ever looked at a head of cauliflower closely? When you look at it, you see that each floret, each flower, is repeated in the actual floret. And then if you take a little floret and it's repeated again, and you'd cut that and it's repeated again, it just keeps getting repeated and repeated until it gets smaller and smaller, but it's the same. And holographic, well, I think the holographic universe is a whole different topic. We could be here all day if we talked about, you would have eaten your lunch, had your AGM, cleared the table, cleaned the kitchen, done the dishes before I was finished talking about it. So we're not going to do that. You can look it up on Google Images, YouTube videos, Wikipedia. Just basically, Tony's statement means that since we are created in the image, that's the fractal part, and the likeness, the holographic part, which is spirit of God, that all that God is in us, as us. What does this have to do with forgiveness? The fact that since everything in the universe is us, and God in us is energy, all of God's energy is in each of us, like a hologram. And if we want to experience that, we need to rid ourselves of what's ever blocking our knowledge of that. And this includes fear, resentment, blame, etc., of ourselves and others. So we can claim our true identity as a fractal holographic vibrational being living in a multi-dimensional holographic universe having a spiritual experience. Don't you think we should say that every Sunday? I think we're forgetting a great opportunity. But so the question is, who or what can you forgive? The next question is, am I really listening? When was the last time you really listened to your children, your partner, your inner thoughts? Maybe these days you've been listening to them so much, like you've had enough of listening, and you just want to sometimes, enough. But you can become curious. This is the ultimate spiritual curiosity. Wondering what's behind their words, their thoughts, the feelings that are being expressed instead of maybe multitasking. How many Zoom calls have you been on where you know very well that somebody's doing something, reading their email, you can see their eyes are kind of going like this and their head's turning, and they're not paying any attention to the meeting. But instead of doing that, pay attention. Instead of figuring out how your kid's telling you about a problem, and instead of telling them how to fix it, why don't you help explore with them how they can fix it? The law of attraction is a famous law, and that can help us improve our circumstances of our lives, and it's valuable for doing so. The risk is if we begin to believe that that's all there is. Our ego is perfectly capable of conjuring up one thing after another that we need in order to be happy. And then we find ourselves on the same treadmill that has led so many people to live, as Thoreau said, lives of quiet desperation, always chasing after the next thing. Unity minister Paula Koppel has another law that she talks about, the law of attention. The law of attention implies a peaceful practice of expanded awareness. It's a manifestation of love. So being more attentive means being more loving. Isn't that what we all want to be? We know this from our own experience. We know that when someone pays attention to us, they're looking, they're listening, they're not doing anything else, we feel cared about, don't we? And so being curious is about putting our needs aside and focusing our complete attention on the speaker, letting the law of attention being fulfilled in us. For example, using the phrase that we learned in Eye of the Storm, saying, tell me more. When someone, another way I put it is, when someone is not so skillfully expressing hurt or pain. In other words, they're yelling at you, they're being nasty, they're, all the things. So this is when we can separate the person from the behavior and feel compassion for their pain without trying to fix it, knowing that they have their own answers within. And we can serve as a sounding block for them without getting all caught up in it. So are you really listening? The next question is, what is your why? At a recent employee meeting, the Unity World Headquarters CEO Jim Blake invited the staff to answer why, as in, why do I work here? What inspires me? He was asking the staff why they work at Unity Village. Now, it's a good question for each of us to think about, not why we work at Unity Village, although that would be awesome, but what inspires me? Why do I do what I do? I started thinking about that. Why at my age, let's face it, I'm older than a lot of you, do I give my mind and my heart to unity, to helping ministries thrive, to spending time learning how to best serve leaders and congregations across Canada? A lot of you know, and you can tell how passionate I am about unity, the principles that we profess and the beliefs we hold. I wonder if it's maybe because I'm my mother's daughter, curious and wondering about what I can do to make the world a better place. I know there's something greater than me at work in the universe. And I love how I'm led to interesting blogs and websites and workshops and then sharing the information with everyone. My mother would have loved the internet, really. So what is your why? And the last question is, what if this could be easy and fun? May Rowland, who was the director of Silent Unity for a while, suggested that when we feel overwhelmed or burdened or worried, we should give the situation the light touch, the touch of light. She wrote, our success lies not so much in how we handle a situation, but in how we handle ourselves. We're able to handle each situation that arises easily and smoothly and harmoniously with the light touch when we learn to control and direct our thinking about each situation. Our strength emerges from our way of thought. We'll always have to deal with situations in life that we could interpret as less than pleasant. Life happens. Can we laugh about it? Nobody asked for, at least not consciously, the coronavirus. Living consciously doesn't change that it's happened, but it does fundamentally shift how we respond to it. Asking yourself, what if this could be easy and fun, is a powerful way to connect with a deeper place of peace and centeredness in your day-to-day living, like these Calgary line dancers. Did anybody of you see this?
No less. Helicopter captured the footage, and they're very talented. Look at this.
There's a
Nailing it.
policeman there.
COVID-19 has changed the way we do things, it said, but connecting with Calgarians is always important to us. Staying apart and maintaining physical distancing didn't stop these officers from staying in step with the fantastic community members. And everyone's saying more of this, please. We've seen the city of Calgary do a lot of fun things like drive-by birthday parties for kids and seniors to help keep things light and bright during the pandemic. I give them 2 high kicks for those efforts. That's impressive. Can anybody here line dance? Roger, can you line dance?
Isn't that fun? Did you guys see that when it came out on breakfast television? I think it's gone viral. The other thing that was so funny the other day, one of my friends was telling me that she was just sitting at home and it happened to be her birthday and she was feeling very sorry for herself. And all of a sudden she heard this burp, burp, this huge blast. And she thought, what is that? And then she heard a loudspeaker saying, happy birthday. Well, she went and looked outside the door and there was a fire truck. Did you know they're doing that in Calgary? But the funniest thing was that it wasn't for her. The little girl across the street was turning 7 and the fire truck and the firefighters were there for her. But so she went out and she was just telling them, well, she got so much joy out of that story. She was laughing harder, I think, when she told me the story and how she had thought it was all about her until she discovered it wasn't. I mean, there's so much to laugh about these days, isn't there? Now, I know I promised you 7 questions and these are only 5, but if you're curious, you can go to the unity.org website to find all 14. I'm not going to tell you, well, Tina's going to put up the link to the website, but then you have to explore and find out, where did Pat get these questions from? Because remember, as I quoted at the beginning, curiosity is spirit knocking at the door, at the window of your soul, saying, take a look at what you could be doing and ask why, or really, as I prefer, why not? Why not take some time and look at what you're doing? Because when spirit is delivering the inspiration of curiosity, we have nothing to fear by following through.